Today is the first day of real reckoning for the Epstein class.
We have been advocates of maximum transparency, but we have also insisted that the victims be carefully protected.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein.
I beg you, President Trump, please stop making this political. Your behavior on this issue has been a national embarrassment.
Well, the bill to release the Epstein files passed the House this afternoon. The Senate is going to take it up by unanimous consent. It could soon be on the president's desk. Let's bring in our panel now. Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt, Josh Holmes, host of the Ruthless podcast, and former Chief of Staff to Senator Mitch McConnell, and Politico White House Bureau Chief Dasha Burns. So the president did an about-face on Epstein after resisting this for an awfully long time. Dasha, you and your colleague Jack Blanchard wrote about this in terms of its cost to President Trump. What a debacle this has been for the president. 4 months of defensive plays that divided his core supporters, wasted precious political capital, and offered an open goal to his opponents, and still didn't prevent the files being dragged out in the open. And this from Marjorie Taylor Greene earlier today.
This has been one of the most destructive things to MAGA. Watching this actually turn into a fight has ripped MAGA apart.
Dasha, where does the president stand tonight, politically?
Well, look, practically, he is going to sign this bill. He said as much. His team is now going to pivot to a strategy of, according to my sources, pushing the Democrats, investigating Democrats. The Stacey Plaskett incident with her texting Jeffrey Epstein during a hearing, they are going to go big on that. The concern for the White House, though, is that no matter what happens from here, no matter what is released, there is not going to be enough to satisfy the people that want that smoking gun. And they are concerned that this is not going to go away, even with the bill signing, even with more getting released.
You know, the Democrats here have tried to pin this on President Trump, but the blowback, Stacey Plaskett, Larry Summers, who said, "I'm deeply ashamed of my actions and recognize the pain they have caused. I take full responsibility for my misguided decision to continue communicating with Mr. Epstein." It goes on, but he talked to Epstein for years.
Yeah, it has been
the
a stunt
sexual
from the
things
beginning.
first became public. So who comes out of this worse?
It's a frag grenade that hits a bunch of people that we don't know. There are at least 36 victims of Jeffrey Epstein who he abused, that I feel for them that they're back in the center light. It will not take a dent in Donald Trump. He's got nothing to do with this. I believe him completely that this will absolutely bounce off of him. However, it is going to always tar the people who pushed it forward, including the Republicans who pushed it forward, because it's a stunt that was indifferent to the needs of the victim. It should make people angry, and it will hurt some innocent people.
It's interesting, in the House today, there was only one no vote, that from Clay Higgins, Republican of Louisiana, who said, if enacted in its current form, this type of broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt. Are you concerned, Josh, when it gets over to the Senate? Speaker Johnson implored the Senate to fix that part of it. Do you think it will just go through the way the House passed it? And could that be a real problem?
Look, I think it's politically untenable to do anything other than get it off their plate as fast as possible. But Clay Higgins is entirely right, and I think Hugh is exactly right. The unintended consequences of something like this are profound. I mean, I think this is a perfect vignette into one of the dumbest eras of American politics I've ever seen. You've got huge press conferences put together about Epstein, a guy who died several years ago for crimes committed 2 decades ago. Meanwhile, you got people worrying about health care, they're worrying about the economy, they're worrying about all this stuff, and the political class sort of celebrating this whole thing, which has absolutely nothing to do with improving the lives of the American people.
Quick thought?
I think the longer-term implication for Trump politically out of this incident, though, is this permission structure that has now been created. I think that's part of the reason the White House has been so frustrated. A permission structure because of folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene for people in the MAGA base to resist him or to vote against him.
All right, let's go to foreign policy, because Hugh, I know you love that. The meeting today between President Trump and Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince. The president and the Crown Prince talking about the Abraham Accords in their meetings. Listen here.
We've had a very good talk on the Abraham Accords. I think you have a very good feeling toward the Abraham Accords.
Yes, definitely, Mr. President. We want peace for the Israelis. We want peace for the Palestinians. We want them to coexist peacefully in the region.
So the Prime Minister, the Crown Prince said that he wants to be a part of the Abraham Accords, but He wants to make sure there's a two-state solution in Israel.
This is the most significant thing that's going to happen between now and the end of the year is this visit by the Crown Prince to the White House. If the Abraham Accords expand to include Saudi Arabia, it will reinvent the Middle East in the way that President Trump started in his first term. It's a big win for the president. It's a serious topic, and we all ought to be focused on the serious things, not the sideshows in Congress.
Right. So it's the first visit of the Saudi de facto leader since Jamal Khashoggi was murdered. That came up in the question and answer. Listen to this.
About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose. It's painful and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that.
The president says Mohammed bin Salman knew nothing about it. A 2021 U.S. intelligence assessment says that he, at the very least, green-lighted it.
Yeah, look, there are going to be a lot of Americans that are uncomfortable with the red carpet being rolled out for MBS. But this has been the Trump foreign policy doctrine. Reach out, talk to people that other leaders haven't talked to, invite them to the White House, no matter who it might offend.
Right. So, Josh, frosty relations between the United States and Saudi Arabia during the Biden administration. There was a fist bump instead of a handshake. It was all about Khashoggi. That seems to have been put behind us in terms of official U.S. foreign policy. So where do you see the relationship going forward?
Yeah, I mean, we see the results of that Biden relationship with Saudi Arabia and what happened in the 4 years that he was presiding over all. The absolute abject disaster, chaos, war in the Middle East. If you look at where the Trump administration from the first 4 years left off with the Abraham Accords, you can very clearly see a line drawn towards this visit and ultimately an expansion of an Abraham Accords where you can have a future in the Middle East that is not war-torn, that has economic incentive, not only in the region, but with the United States of America. You can see this on a number of different occasions. They're doing it a different way, and frankly, they've had success every step.
Saudi Arabia's got lots of money. MBS said that he's going to invest up to $1 billion in the United States. And here is what, sorry, that's $1 trillion.
Trillion. Yeah.
Billion, trillion, it gets nebulous after a while. Brett Baer asked the Treasury Secretary about that. Listen here.
What's the timetable for investments like that? When you hear $1 trillion, what are we thinking timetable-wise?
Well, I can tell you the president's very keen for it to happen during his term, and we're already seeing a lot of it start to flow in.
Hugh, you and I come from an era when $1 billion was a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I'm looking for where that $400 billion goes. If he puts it into the leading AI companies, that will reduce the fear of the AI bubble that's out there. But it's welcome news, and the president just keeps bringing home win after win, as Scott Bessent told Brett.
New relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia on the books here?
Potentially. I'm curious to see what that means for Israel. That relationship has obviously not been incredibly cozy, and how the president gets these leaders that have not traditionally gotten along to get on the same page.
Final thought, Josh?
Yeah, there's a trust relationship here. You can see that with the sale of the F-35. You know, if Saudi Arabia wasn't going to get it from us, probably get it from China. Probably creates more problems in the Middle East than it solves. This way, there is a trust relationship that they can build on. I think it's all good news from today.
Could be exciting times for the Middle East ahead. Thank you for joining us tonight, folks. Really appreciate it. Breaking right now, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, on the floor ahead of a highly anticipated vote on releasing the Epstein files. Let's listen in.
Democrats are using the Epstein tragedy, the unspeakable evils that this guy committed with his trafficking ring and all of the abuses that they made these young women go through. They're using that as a political weapon to try to distract from their failures as a party, and to try their best to try to tie President Trump somehow into this wretched scandal. The president had nothing to do with it. He's been very clear, and he has nothing to hide, and that's why he's endorsed the vote today. I suspect this vote will be probably unanimous. But here's the important point that everybody needs to understand. We have been advocates of maximum transparency, but we have also insisted that the victims be carefully protected. The Oversight Committee has been doing extraordinary work, and we've got some of the most vigorous advocates on the Republican and Democrat side on the Oversight Committee. They've been working in earnest to deliver transparency for the American people and to do it in a responsible manner. What do we mean by that? The bipartisan effort over there is already producing all the results that the discharge petition seeks and much, much more. Chairman Comer and all of these advocates over there have been releasing thousands of documents, for example, from the Epstein estate. By the way, in my view, that's been the greatest treasure trove of information because it's yielded for us Epstein's own personal flight logs, his financial records, his daily calendars, and so much more. But importantly, none of that was addressed or is addressed in the legislation that's being voted on today. The estate files wouldn't even have been encompassed in that. And so it goes to show that the Oversight Committee is doing it from the right way. From the very beginning, we've been insistent that this matter be handled carefully and with the utmost caution and care for the people who have been harmed. They should not be made to suffer any longer. We're talking about real people's lives at stake here, and young victims who don't want to be dragged into this political game that could get hurt further. But the Democrats are rushing the release of thousands of unsubstantiated documents that may be included in this, that are going to be in the public domain with the passage of this bill. And there are serious deficiencies in the legislation that I have noted at length, and Republicans have to work to address those deficiencies in the Senate if and when this legislation is advanced. I stood before the American public today at our press conference, and I explained in detail the dangers of the discharge petition. We have posted at my website, speaker.gov, a summary. The legal counsel, a small army of lawyers, put this together. I used to be a federal court litigator. Many of my colleagues who have spoken today were. We understand the dangers of how this was haphazardly drawn up. And among them, by the way, Mr. Speaker, before I forget, I seek unanimous consent to enter into this document into the record. It's on the website. It's entitled, How the Flaws of H.R. 4405 Could Re-Victimize Epstein's Victims, Create New Victims, and Damage the Judicial System. It is dated today. Thank you. And it summarizes just 5 or 6 of the major concerns. Among them, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. It could create new categories of victims. It potentially jeopardizes grand jury secrecy. It fails to prohibit release of child sexual abuse materials that are not appropriately defined in the legislation. It jeopardizes future federal investigations, and we have national security concerns regarding classified information. We'll put this in the record because we need the legislative record to reflect what is the legislative intent behind this vote. I used to litigate cases. We would litigate federal statutes and whether or not they could survive, and legislative intent is important. And we need to say clearly for the record, as a Speaker of the House, I'm saying to you, this legislation that will pass today is flawed and it must be amended. The question is, why didn't we amend it here before we passed it? Because the authors won't allow it. Because under the rules of the House, under a discharge petition, they have to agree to consent for the legislation to be amended, and they're not doing that. So now we rely upon our partners in the other chamber to get that done, and they need to do that. The victims deserve our utmost respect. In fact, they should be saluted for their courage. And the young women who have not come forward, who are now, some of them are middle-aged women who have not come forward, also deserve our respect, and they deserve to be protected. Republicans support transparency. We want maximum transparency, especially when it comes to disclosing the names of anybody who had anything to do with these evils, anybody who conspired with or aided in any way Jeffrey Epstein. They must be brought to justice. We want the bill to be amended so it doesn't, at the same time, violate victim privacy, create new victims, disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, cause the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermine our national security. And if and when the Senate takes this up, we will work with our colleagues over there to make sure that these things are corrected. I'll just close with this simple thought. We've been at this a while. It's drug on for a while, but it's time for this to come to light. I expect that this will be a unanimous vote, and it will reflect what I think every member in this chamber, and I'll say this now, at least in recent days, every member of the chamber on the Democrat side, they didn't say anything for 4 years, but they're for maximum transparency now, and so is this side. But we want to do it in a respectful and careful manner so that we don't subject innocent people to further harm. And that has been the whole thing. I told all my members today I'll be voting yes on this, and I suspect almost everyone will. We'll send it to the Senate, and we hope it's corrected. Thank you for the time, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych it. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me. But he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's, your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep, the fund guy, was with him all the time. What's his name? Who? Reid Hoffman. I don't know Reid Hoffman, but I know he spends a lot of money on the radical left. Reid Hoffman, in my opinion, should be under investigation. He's a sleazebag. And those are the people, but they don't get any press, they don't get any news, and you're not after the radical left because you're a radical left network. But I think the way you ask a question with the anger and the meanness is terrible. You ought to go back and learn how to be a reporter. No more questions from you.
Legislation forcing the Justice Department to publicly release its files on the late financier and convicted sexual abuser Jeffrey Epstein could be on President Trump's desk very soon. The House passed the measure this morning, and a short time ago, the Senate agreed to approve it by unanimous consent. Senior national correspondent Aisha Husney has the details. She's on Capitol Hill for us. Good evening, Aisha.
John, good evening to you. And it was Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer who asked for unanimous consent, which fast tracks everything, doesn't require a vote, and no senator objected, which means that the Senate has now synced up with the House. And so as soon as the House releases this bill text, the president will then sign it. John? Excuse me.
Tonight, the House passed a bill 427-1, compelling the Justice Department to release all files related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Republican Congressman Clay Higgins, the only no vote, claiming on X that the bill's broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt.
It risks re-victimizing those who were trafficked and exploited.
But the bill's authors disagree.
Justice delayed is justice denied. It could be just another delay tactic.
Is that what you think? That's the motivation from the Speaker?
I think the Speaker wants to save face.
The fight over the Epstein files runs far deeper. Many Republicans claim Democrats are politicizing this investigation to harm President Trump, and they wonder why now.
To those who say that Biden should have released these files, let me just address that right now. You're right. He should have. He's not the president right now. Donald Trump is.
Republicans also say it's Democrats who are connected to Epstein, like Larry Summers, the former Clinton Treasury Secretary and former Harvard president, announcing this week he's stepping back from public life after emails and text messages revealed Summers, a married man, was seeking advice from Epstein on how to pursue someone he described as a female mentee. It happened between 2018 and 2019, 10 years after Epstein first pled guilty to soliciting a minor. Congress may not be united on the Epstein bill today, but dozens of survivors are. The brother of Virginia Roberts Giuffre in tears.
Well, Sissy, you didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact.
And John, in 2 days' time, the House will take a vote on whether or not to censure Delegate Stacey Plaskett and remove her from the Intel Committee over text messages that she was exchanging with Jeffrey Epstein during a congressional hearing where he was feeding her information that she was using in questioning. John?
Yes, that one was really an eye-opener. And Aisha, a federal judge handed Republicans and President Trump a big blow to their efforts to keep the House next year. What's that all about?
Yeah, this came down from a three-judge panel in Texas, and they basically ruled that Republicans there cannot use those newly redrawn maps in next year's midterm elections. The U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Brown, who actually was nominated by President Trump, authored this decision and said that the new maps would harm Black and Hispanic voters. And as you know, John, the Texas redrawing set off a nationwide redistricting battle, with California passing a ballot measure to give Democrats more seats. So this may actually take some pressure off other states like Indiana that were perhaps next in line to redraw their maps. John?
And we'll find out if it doesn't work in Texas, maybe it doesn't work in California either. More to come on that. Aisha, thank you.
You got it.
My next guest has been pushing for answers on the Clintons, pointing out on X, Bill and Hillary Clinton are refusing to appear before House oversight for their depositions regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Notice how House Democrats suddenly have nothing to say about it. Joining me now, Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Congresswoman, thank you for being with us here today. Let's talk about Bill Clinton. For all the talk regarding Jeffrey Epstein, so much of it in many corners focuses on President Trump. But it's not President Trump who had a painting in Jeffrey Epstein's house wearing a dress and high heels. It's not President Trump who'd been to the island. It's not President Trump who's littered throughout the emails by others talking about, hey, Jeff, I saw your boy at Davos. Why are we not talking about Bill Clinton?
Well, I think it's important to note that even from the beginning of my task force in January of this year, I was really pushing to figure out what the deal was with these documents. And in around February timeframe, I was made aware by a whistleblower, of which I have since reported this to the FBI. And it was actually the only outlet in the country that would report on our findings was Fox News. We had actually reported that we were made aware of a whistleblower that under the former deputy director of the FBI, so under Biden's FBI, there was destruction of evidence specifically pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein and potential evidence tampering. I think that that's pretty important to note because I went public with this, and not one member of Congress, really for the most part, a majority of Republicans weren't even tracking that. But for those that were trying to use this to smear the president, notice how they never made a mention of that. As we continued in our investigations, I've gone to every potential meeting with these victims. I sat in the same room where the victims exonerated President Trump and said that they simply want access to their files that they had requested from the DOJ under Biden and were denied access to. I can tell you that this administration has released over 50,000 files. Remember, Democrats tried to selectively pick and choose emails to, again, try to smear the president. Notice how they didn't put the Jeffrey Epstein email in there that talked about how much he hated the president. And you even had one of their own actively engaging in communication with this pedophile, not to try to get justice for the victims or justice for the children, but to try to smear the president. And so I've said this from the get-go, the president hasn't changed his position. Any single person in the country, if you were being accused of being a convicted sex trafficker and pedophile, you would obviously be upset too. The president has pushed for transparency. I have frankly had many members conversations about this, and I think what we're mostly disgusted about is that this entire time, it does seem that this has been only used to smear the president. Now, he actually said the other day, go ahead and release the files. I think it was on Friday he started saying that. He reiterated the Truth Social statement, but ultimately at the end of the day, I don't want people to get distracted from the facts here, and the facts is that Jeffrey Epstein was a bad person. We obviously have been made aware, Congress has as a whole, you guys did the article yourselves on it, that there was potential destruction of evidence and evidence tampering. Now, I ask you, why under a former administration that's Democrat-run that was already targeting the president, why would you ever want to destroy evidence? Why would you ever want to tamper with evidence? And this is publicly known to be happening at the FBI during the transition. So that's a huge problem and signifies a bigger issue here.
Yeah, if that evidence implicated President Trump. However, if that evidence implicated other sympathetic figures to the previous administration, I think we have the answer to your question. Quickly, because I want to cover one other thing with you here today, Congresswoman, but perhaps you're most well suited to answer the question that I asked yesterday. Why? Why did so many high-profile figures continue to consort with Jeffrey Epstein after his 2008 conviction for soliciting an underage minor? Why, from every academic walk of life, from finance to politics to entertainment, did so many people turn to Jeffrey Epstein to ask him questions about their life, their business, to be his friend?
Jeffrey Epstein was a master manipulator. We've heard this not just from the victims, but it's very evident in how he handled and manipulated politicians as well as world leaders. I believe that his immense wealth lured people in, kind of how a bug is lured to a bug zapper. And ultimately, I do believe that there's an aspect to Jeffrey Epstein that involves foreign intelligence. But make no mistake, if it was American intelligence, we would have had some form of file on him that existed at the CIA. And to my knowledge, that doesn't exist. The fact is that Jeffrey Epstein was running an operation where he was collecting information on people, which is why they try to smear the president. But we know that Mr. President is clean, and he's the most investigated man in U.S. history. And definitely, I'm frankly glad that those emails came out, because it proved exactly what we've been saying the whole time.
So to be clear, there's a lot of wealthy financiers from New York. There's a lot of people connected politically. Very few of them seem to have the deep relationship he had in all walks of life. Your answer to me as to why suggests the distinguishing factor with Jeffrey Epstein from your other politically connected wealthy individuals is that you believe he's also connected to foreign intelligence, that he was using that as an operation to compromise individuals in the United States.
Yes.
What specifically, who's he worked for, Jeffrey Epstein?
I had asked the victim attorney representation directly in front of all of House Oversight and the Speaker of the House if, to their knowledge, he had information or if he was involved with a foreign government. And they said that he was actively in communication at the time while he was under arrest with the former director of the CIA, so different administration, not Trump's administration, but different administration, and that they had heard / had potentially knowledge that he was involved with Israel, Iran, and Russia.
And directly communicating with them while he was under arrest,
correct.
You said?
That he had communications with foreign intelligence, correct? That he was directly communicating via his bodyguard through notes with the former director of the CIA. And this is, mind you, not during the Trump administration, but when he was first on house arrest. So I believe it was actually under the Bush CIA director.
And to be clear, Congresswoman, you're getting this information from where?
From the victims' attorneys. And they actually told all of this to House Oversight, so Democrats, Republicans, and the Speaker of the House.
So from victims' attorneys that Jeffrey Epstein is connected in the manner that you're talking about to foreign intelligence services?
Correct.
Okay, and just to be clear, because you've significantly piqued my curiosity here, how would the victims' attorneys have access to that information of Jeffrey Epstein's foreign intelligence connections?
I actually had asked them where their main source was, and one of them was from his bodyguard, who, to my knowledge, is still alive today. Also, the victims did see a lot of information, but at the time when I answered this, or when I asked this question in front of everyone, it was the attorney answering, not the victims directly. So,
and Congresswoman, what's the name of that bodyguard?
I don't have I have it written down in my notes, but I don't have the name off the top of my head. But he's, to my knowledge, still alive, because I actually asked that question for follow-up on the investigation.
Yeah, that'd be a great source to follow up with then for this information. Well, I appreciate the candid nature of this conversation. It's obviously worthy of a much deeper discussion, and I think that this is a part of the story that deserves investigation. Before you go today, I did want to ask you about something else that I saw from some of your colleagues in the House. It's pretty fascinating, but this is a group of Democrat politicians, all of whom I believe served either in the military or in an intelligence service, and they just put out this video earlier today.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
the Army,
or Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
And know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
the American people need you. We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
That's Alyssa Slotkin, Jason Crow, Mark Kelly, many others, really encouraging the military to refuse orders.
I mean, I'm surprised they didn't ask me to be in the video. I'm a vet. I obviously don't think the military should, get behind illegal orders. But the fact is that this military isn't being ordered to do anything illegal. So obviously partisan in nature. I would argue, why didn't they do a video calling out at the same time General Milley for when he hopped on a call with China to tell him, this, that, and the other pertaining to President Trump's agenda? The fact is that this whole objective of the Democrats in both the House and the Senate is to obstruct, to draw attention away from their failures. And I look forward to what President Trump has planned specifically on health care.
It feels a little insurrection-y, I think one might point out as well. Feels a little insurrection-y. So. All right, Congresswoman Luna, thank you so much for your time today. I hope to talk again soon and follow up on some of those questions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So let's bring in our colleague, Brett Baer, anchor special report. Brett, good morning to you.
Good morning.
First, have a gander yesterday. Here's the president talking about Epstein being exclusively a Democratic problem. Here he is on that.
I'm for I don't, they can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much because, honestly, I don't want to take it away from us. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends, all of them. And it's a hoax.
Okay, so let's see which way this goes. We do not know the fallout yet. I think we can say that. But based on Aisha's reporting there, the fallout is already beginning, Brett.
Yeah, I think so. By the way, I'm partial to the pink frog protester up there. I hadn't seen him before. But listen, I think that this is a big moment because it is a turnaround from where the president was and how he talked about it and what the instructions essentially were, how House Speaker Johnson was dealing with it. You're now going to see the floodgates open because a lot of people wanted to vote for this. And now that the president has opened that up, I think the vote is not in question at all, and they'll probably get a ton of votes. Now, where does it go? How long does it take? Do we see the documents? How much is out and how much is not out? And I don't think we have a sense of that from the DOJ. Remember, thousands and thousands of pages have been put out already. And what we're seeing so far, you're right, cuts both ways as far as embarrassment and also, even worse when it comes to the victims talking about that.
So we cover a lot of live events in D.C. That's one of the largest crowds I've seen for something like this. So I get it that there is a lot of interest in it. And when you say it cuts both ways, we showed you through Aisha's reporting about Congresswoman Plaskett's questioning of Cohen as she's texting with Epstein. But Derek Van Orden also spoke about this. Now, he's a Republican from Wisconsin. Watch here.
Epstein was convicted in 2009 of sex trafficking. Ms. Plaskett represents the Virgin Islands, where Epstein Island is. She was speaking to him a few months before he died in prison, asking him what questions she should be asking witnesses that were going after President Trump. There's in no universe can you say that that was a good thing to do.
What do you make of that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, those text messages are pretty straightforward. He is in the process of watching the hearing saying good job about the question that he prompted her to ask Michael Cohen. It kind of happens real time in the way that the timestamp is. And I think that, as I'm saying, it cuts both ways. There will be Democrats that are very affected by this and what comes out of all of these pages. I think the president feels and is expressing his confidence that he's not a part of this. And I guess what is, for Washington reporters, tough to get your head around is why it took this long to get to this statement about go ahead and vote for it. Yeah. And what was behind that effort up until yesterday.
Yeah, they could have done it under the past administration. They chose not to. Brett, there's a lot of folks dancing around the living body of Chuck Schumer at the moment, okay? They think he's pretty much destined for defeat. Well, I've seen a lot of people survive in Washington for a long time, all right? Here's the head of one of the progressive leaders, Adam Green's his name. He says the conversation started, the conversation legitimized, and the conversation's moving forward. And the last people to accept the point will be those closest to Chuck Schumer, including some of his fellow senators. How much attention is this getting in D.C.? I imagine a lot, but is this something that will come to pass? Can we say that now?
I think more betting is on Chuck Schumer leaving, or at least leaving the Senate Minority Leader position, maybe even not running again. I mean, that's the going line here in the Washington circles. But you're right, people have survived these things. I think that there was a lot of frustration about the handling of the continuing resolution and the shutdown and what was the benefit from that for Democrats. And that is still reverberating here in Washington. Chuck Schumer is, he's got a problem on the left. And the question is what the Democratic Party looks like as it heads to 26. They're going to have to figure that out. Right now, the passion and the power is on the left side of the party.
Got it. We'll see you tonight. Scott Besson is on with you. We'll watch that interview then.
Good afternoon, and live from Texas, this is the Will Cain Show. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, political donations to Democrats from Jeffrey Epstein. All of that coming up in just a moment on the Will Cain Show. But we start with a Fox News alert. A day at the White House for Saudi Arabia's crown prince. In a few hours, Mohammed bin Salman will dine with President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump. Ahead of that, we thought we'd show you some of the highlights. Pretty impressive images, starting with an F-35 and F-22 flyover. Trump walked the crown prince down the Presidential Walk of Fame, stopping for a closer look at President Biden's autopin portrait. That wasn't the only time Biden came up.
Trump doesn't give a fist pump. I grabbed that hand. I don't give a hell where that hand's been. I grabbed that hand. Remember Biden? He travels for 20 hours, gets out, and he gives a fist bump. No. When you get out of the plane and you got the future king and the man who's one of the most respected people in the world, you shake his hand. You don't give him a fist bump, right? We don't want to ask you about that, but I can't imagine you were thrilled.
Trump, of course, referencing this infamous moment when then President Biden fist bumped bin Salman to kick off his visit. Things got a little heated, though, when a reporter asked why the crown prince should be trusted by Americans.
You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
I feel painful about, the families of 9/11 in America, but, we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden, he used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi relation. He knows that strong relation between America and Saudi Arabia, it's bad for extremism, it's bad for terrorism. And we have to approve him wrong.
President Trump confirming that he's allowing the Saudis to buy several F-35 fighter jets. Also expected at the White House today, international soccer superstar Cristiano Ronaldo, perhaps the only man on the face of the planet somewhere in the vicinity of the fame of President Donald Trump. And it's a dream of Ronaldo's.
One of the guys that I want to meet. I wish one day, if you have an opportunity,
I can make that happen.
Make that happen, or tell him that one of the guys that I want to sit to have a nice talk, it was one of the guys.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
At Trump's meeting with the Crown Prince, he made it known where he stands on today's House vote to release the rest of the Epstein files.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did.
Speaker Mike Johnson says he's worried about protecting victims and whistleblowers, even though we've already heard several previously private whistleblowers and victims come out publicly. But in the end, that Johnson, he voted yes to send it to the Senate.
Anybody who conspired with or aided in any way Jeffrey Epstein, they must be brought to justice. We want the bill to be amended so it doesn't, at the same time, violate victim privacy, create new victims, disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, cause the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermine our national security. And if and when the Senate takes this up, we will work with our colleagues over there to make sure that these things are corrected.
So it passed the House 427-1. Now it heads to the Senate. What's next? Here's how it unfolds. The bill needs to pass the Senate and the president's signature to become law. The DOJ would have 30 days to make the files available in a searchable and downloadable format. Information relating to the ongoing investigation, privacy of the victims can all be redacted, and it prohibits redactions based on political embarrassment or reputational harm. The reality? Jeffrey Epstein had a lot of friends, but friends significantly on one side of the aisle. Democrats. Take a look at Epstein's political contributions over time. $139,000 to Democrat candidates and committees, $18,000 to Republican candidates and groups. He also gave millions to top colleges. Harvard received $9.1 million between 1998 and 2008. $200,000 of that remains unspent as of May 1st, 2020. MIT received $850,000 over a 15-year span. Many of those donations made after his 2008 conviction. And speaking of Harvard, former Harvard president and Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, mentioned a moment ago by President Trump, is stepping back from public comments amid the fallout after emails showed him getting dating advice from Epstein. Quote, "I'm deeply ashamed of my actions and recognize the pain they have caused. I take full responsibility for my misguided decision to continue communicating with Mr. Epstein." So, after this information, why should the American people trust Democrats all of a sudden when it comes to Epstein? Why are they honest brokers seeking the truth when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein? Even they can't answer that question.
Why should Americans trust you and House Democrats on the Jeffrey Epstein files when one of your own, Congresswoman Plaskett, was found to be texting with Jeffrey Epstein during a hearing, getting information from him, using that in her questioning during a congressional hearing, and at one point he tells her, "Good job."
This is a bipartisan effort to make sure that, consistent with what the survivors have requested, that there's full and complete transparency, and every single predator who may be in those Justice Department files doesn't escape accountability.
In addition to Larry Summers, you heard President Trump mention another name when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton.
It's just funny how the news works, because Bill Clinton, wrote a letter to, Jeffrey Epstein as well for his birthday, but nobody's talking about that. And Jeffrey Epstein had a picture of Bill Clinton in a dress and high heels, in his New York mansion, but nobody's talking about that. My thing is this: I don't care who's on the list. Everybody got to go.
Host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio and a Fox News contributor. Guy, it's great to have you with us. Obviously, this has been a long haul. The story is not over. There have been a number of Democrats who have been pushed into the forefront on this story, including Larry Summers, who we'll talk about in just a moment. But what's your take on what happened here today, Guy?
Well, it's pretty extraordinary that it was a nearly unanimous vote given where things stood just a few days ago, right? The Democrats, I think, absolutely politicized this. Everyone seems to have politicized this to some extent. And we played the clip of a Democrat saying, well, of course Biden should have done it, but he didn't. We're talking about the here and now. They didn't feel like this was worthwhile on that side of the aisle to spend all this time talking about and obsessing over until there was some sort of negative Trump angle that they thought that they had. It's very clear, right? That being said, I think the American people look at what happened in this Epstein cabal. They recognize deep down something very evil happened, and I think that there was some conspiracy to cover it up or to downplay it and to evade accountability and justice. So there's a hunger among the public to say, enough of that, let's see everything. And for a while, Trump hated the fact that this was going in this direction because of the politics he felt like the Democrats were playing. He was urging Republicans to line up and vote no on exactly this kind of bill. But the trickling defections kept coming. And I was hearing that the leadership on the Republican side here in D.C. were expecting and bracing for something of a jailbreak, a ton of defections, at which point Trump said, you know what, forget it. Let's just endorse the whole thing and put it out there. And now the question, Martha, becomes, to your point, what comes next? Because in its current form, legislation saying just put every single thing out in the open has some very practical drawbacks and problems with it. And maybe the U.S. Senate will consider those as they move forward.
Yeah, we heard Speaker Johnson's concerns about some things that could come out, because what we're seeing is that anybody who's ever mentioned in any way is swept with this broad brush. And in terms of the grand jury discussions and the back and forth in the grand jury, Speaker Johnson expressed some concerns about some of that. But President Trump has said this is a Democrat problem, that it's a problem for more prominent Democrats, and he says it is not a problem for him in terms of what could come out in this. And Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary and the former president of Harvard University, one of the most well-known economists in the country, was corresponding with Epstein. And I think that one of the things that's very significant here, Guy, is that this email that we're looking at, this was sent after the really groundbreaking piece that was in the Miami Herald in the end of 2018, which really was what blew this case wide open in terms of how the Justice Department in Florida handled this whole thing, and how Jeffrey Epstein ended up with just one charge of soliciting prostitution from a minor. So this exploded. But after this explosive Miami Herald investigative piece, this is what Larry Summers was communicating with him about. He was talking about his, this woman he was interested in. And Epstein says, oh, she's smart. She's making you pay for past errors. Ignore the daddy I'm going to go out with the motorcycle guy. You reacted well. Epstein responds, well, we talked on the phone, and then I can't talk later. He goes on to say, she said, I'm busy. I said, awfully coy you are. So he's going back and forth. He's talking about some woman that he is involved with and getting advice from Jeffrey Epstein on how he should handle it. And Epstein's giving him feedback, Guy. So Larry Summers has removed himself, stepped back from very prominent organizations. I think we have a list of some of them. As a result of this, what's your reaction to the Summers part of the story?
Well, I think so much of this saga stinks to high heaven, which is why there's so much suspicion surrounding it. Why would someone of that degree of prominence, and others, by the way, be involved with someone like Epstein and still be corresponding in any sort of meaningful way, in a positive sense, with Epstein after all the allegations were completely public? How's that even possible? It seems unfathomable, which is, I think, one of these nagging questions that a lot of us have about what actually went on here. And I don't like the partisan food fight, but I think most Americans say if you can clear that out and protect the victims, give us virtually everything, because a lot of it still doesn't add up, and accountability is important for the people, especially at the top on the power ladder in this country.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about that original investigation in Florida and why it was controlled so tightly. And then the people who continued, and President Trump did not, he had parted ways with him a long time before this, including Prince Andrew, after that, to sort of cater to him and try to, tell him that they were sorry, Fergie as well, that they had to say things publicly against him. It's pretty stunning. Guy, thank you very much. As you say, a very significant, near unanimous vote to release all these files this afternoon. Always good to have you, Guy. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.